Welcome to MedTalks, your go-to source for health information and medical insights. I'm your host, Juvenava, and we are bringing you the latest in healthcare. Whether you're looking to understand the basics of wellness, gain practical tips for everyday health, or learn about community resources available to help you live a healthier and happier life, MedTalks has you covered. Join us on this journey to better health, and remember, a healthier you starts with a single conversation. Stay informed, stay healthy with MedTalks, where every talk is a step towards a better you.
Start your day with purpose at Hot Cakes for Hope Care, a special breakfast that brings our community together to support patients who need health care the most. Join us Tuesday, June 24th from 6 to 9:30 a.m. at Jimmy's Family Diner. Bring your friends, family, and co-workers for a warm meal, great company, and the chance to bid on some incredible auction items. Every bite helps GraceMed care for those who need it most. Get your tickets today at GraceMed.org.
Welcome to another episode of MedTalks. I am here with our amazing Pastor Steve, chaplain at GraceMed Health Clinic. Welcome, Pastor Steve.
Thank you. It's
How
good
are
to
you?
be here. I'm doing pretty well.
Good.
I'm doing pretty well.
We've been wanting to get you in here for a while, so I'm glad that our schedules worked out to get you in.
Me too.
Yes, because I wanted to talk to you about this. I think a lot of times people don't understand the importance of like spiritual care.
Yep.
And for GraceMed, that's definitely something that really we see a lot of value in, you know, not only your physical health, but your mental health and also like your spiritual care. Can you talk to me more about who you are, your role as a chaplain?
Sure.
Yeah, all that.
So I've been at GraceMed a little over 7 years, and I came to GraceMed from being a local church pastor before coming to GraceMed. And GraceMed's actually been just a great place to be. We see there's just so many needs we see both with our staff and with patients. And the way I tend to think about it, Juven, is we try to do everything we can to build relationships and help people take steps of faith, both for our staff and patients. And the fun thing about the job is it's no day's ever the same. I don't really know what that's going to look like day to day. Just so many people with different needs. And we see people from patients and staff from all sorts of faith backgrounds. So we try to just meet everybody. We try to meet everybody where they are.
Yeah. We've seen a lot of studies that obviously say however you're feeling mentally can really affect your health.
Yes.
Can you talk to us about the spiritual side of that?
The faith, there's some significant amount of research that's been done. In fact, one of our medical providers just this last year had gone to a continuing ed workshop with KU, and it was completely on the impact of faith and your spiritual health on your physical health, and what a significant difference that makes in your whole health. I think that's, we do talk about behavioral health and mental health the same way, but the spiritual side of things and I think especially having a sense of peace, contentment and the trust that you can find through faith can really make a difference, I think, in reducing your anxiety. And we know that stress and anxiety are not always great for your physical health. So I don't know if that makes sense, but that's kind of where that's kind of the way I see that. And we're also trying to do some work with our providers and chaplains working together to provide more opportunities for our patients to pray, at least begin by praying together.
Yeah. You mentioned that you have, obviously, chaplains are available for not only staff, but for patients. For our patients, like if they're looking for that kind of reflection or moment of prayer, what does that look like?
Sure. We see that happen several different ways. Some people know we have chaplains and they reach out to us. And then that's that's either a matter of schedule an appointment time just to sit down with them and talk and to pray. Sometimes that happens in the clinic location. One of our providers or even somebody else on staff will just be able to tell by talking to someone
Yeah.
if they feel like they could benefit from visiting with a chaplain.
Mm-hmm.
So they'll reach out and contact us. Like I said, we do our best. We're always able to get back in touch with someone within 24 to 48 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And if transportation's an issue, for which it is for some of our patients, we just go to that clinic where they're seen and meet with them there. But it's a lot of, like I said, to me, it's a lot about listening.
Yeah.
It's a lot about understanding where a person's coming from, what they're dealing with. We try to do our best to apply the Bible's truth with them and talk about that, but to just pray with them.
Yeah.
I think it helps. I think it helps a lot to know that there's somebody there,
Right.
and that God is real and God cares.
Yeah.
And I think that hopefully that goes a long ways to helping. So it kind of looks different for each patient.
Yeah.
We also do have patients that reach out to us by email all through the website, and there's a place where they can send us a prayer request anonymously on the website, which that happens
That's
too.
nice. That's
Yeah,
nice.
it's a great question.
Is there an example of a time when you've had to perhaps go a little bit further than just prayer with a patient that you wouldn't mind sharing with us?
Sure. Just a few months ago, actually, the one that comes to mind, we had a mom who was she actually wasn't even a patient of GraceMed, but her children were a part of Can Care or Can Be Healthy, and they were seen at one of our clinics, and that she had just recently moved to the area and was just really struggling.
Yeah.
And so she had mentioned she was part of a church. And then this kind of gets into another thing, Juven, I think that's really good to talk about. The different areas at GraceMed here, we do work together on things. And she had gotten in contact with our community cares, our community outreach team, and then they contacted me, and so there's several organizations here in town that will help with. She needed furniture. She was just struggling to get by. So actually, we got her in contact with a couple of different organizations here in town. His Helping Hands is one of them, and they were able to help her out.
That's great.
So I went down. I met with her, talked with her. Prayed with her, and so we just helping anybody any way we can.
That's good.
Is really what we try to do.
Yeah. How do you blend in those relationships with the providers, so that way the providers know that they can reach out to a chaplain, things like that? What does that look like?
Sure. I think that's an area. I feel like that's an area we're growing in. I think that sometimes our providers, they know that and sense that.
Yeah.
Some of our providers are, I think some of our providers are more in tune with that from the beginning than others are. But then normally we'll just get an email or an instant message from the provider saying, "Hey, I just had this patient in, and I think they could really use a call from a chaplain." And so it really varies from provider to provider. The one provider I mentioned a minute ago that had attended the KU workshop, he started working with our Topeka chaplain on a day-to-day basis now, praying for patients. And I'm hoping that's something that's going to expand. I hope that's something that but they actually communicate with each other when there's a need, and our Topeka chaplain just is available on those days. Nice. So that's been, I hope we see it's a little easier in Topeka because there's just the two clinics up there, and our chaplains here have about 7 each. And so it's a little easier for him to be available, but that's worked really well.
That's awesome. How many chaplains do you have?
So we have including myself, we have a total of 4, and the Houston is available for Houston Thompson is our Topeka chaplain for our 2 locations up there, and then really the 3 of us cover the Wichita, Clearwater, and McPherson locations, but Pastor Phil and Pastor Don really do the majority of the clinic visits here in town. So
That's awesome. Not only is this available for our patients, but also the staff at GraceMed.
it is. Yes.
And I can see that you build these strong relationships with our staff, because obviously we want them to be taken care of.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
What does that relationship look like in a professional setting?
Yeah. This is something I always cover with our new employees and new employee orientation, because I think sometimes, of course, they're new, so they don't know what to expect, and they think, okay, we're talking to a chaplain.
Right.
Why is the chaplain in here talking to us?
Exactly.
I think of this, Juven. Sometimes I say this. I always actually say this in new employee orientation sometimes too. I look at it kind of like parenting sometimes, because we have staff that's all over the board from every type of faith background I can imagine,
Right.
and we have some that have said to us as chaplains outright they're atheists. They don't really care about it. We have others that are here for a job,
Yeah.
and they're kind of like, I needed a job. I think GraceMed would be a good place to work. I can kind of take it or leave it on the faith side of things. I would say in a lot of those situations, we just keep showing up. And then over time, we all have things that happen in our lives, and so over time, when we keep showing up at different clinic locations, there will be a time. This has happened to me several times. There will be a time that somebody I've known the whole time I've been here, but until they have something that happens in their life, they don't think to talk to one of us until we show back up. And that, honestly, that's why the showing up is so important. I always kind of felt I was a little bit like that with our kids. If I kind of stayed, especially when they were teenagers, if I stayed around and stayed available for them and kept my mouth shut, they would eventually ask me something that, and that's kind of the way it is sometimes. And we, again, it's a matter of just being ready to always listen. One of our chaplains just last week, one of our chaplains was down at one of our South locations, and one of the employees there had just been having a horrible week and didn't have any money, was having trouble covering expenses, recently gone through big life change, and just needed somebody to talk to. And he happened to be there that day and had the chance just to listen and I think provide some resources and just pray with this employee. So but it just happened to be that day. It happened to be the day when she was really struggling when we showed up. And we kind of think God plans some of those things sometimes and knows better than we do.
Right. I was wondering how it was, or how it is to interact with people who do come from different faith backgrounds, who perhaps believe and don't believe and things like that. Like, how do you manage those feelings?
When it's hard sometimes, it can be hard sometimes, but especially people from different faith backgrounds, I talk in our new employee orientation too. I talk a lot about the parable of the Good Samaritan. And it's really seeing when you see a need, you have compassion and try to meet that need. And I look at our employees that same way, and we've had employees from Muslim backgrounds, from Hindu backgrounds, Mormon, Jehovah's Witness, about every type of Protestant and Catholic I can think of, and we really just try to listen, meet them where they are. I've made calls to the Islamic temple here in town when we've had a new employee, and they kind of wonder why I'm calling initially. Right. But it's always been good because I'm trying to help them get connected to the faith community that they're needing. Yeah. And like I said, with other people. With other people, it's just kind of a matter of being there with where they are. And sometimes it's a matter of taking a step of faith for the first time. But they kind of have to be the ones to drive that. They, based on a need or a question they have, that has to kind of begin. It has to kind of begin with them and an interest on their part, if that makes sense.
No, it does make sense.
And like I said, I think that's the beauty of that. Of Jesus' story of the Good Samaritan from Luke chapter 10 is that there was a person who was in need, and Jesus says the Samaritan, he was the least, the person you expected the least in the story to help, and he went above and beyond with compassion to make a difference. And that's just what we try to do. And like I said, sometimes that's a matter of getting coffee for somebody.
Right.
And sometimes it's a matter of listening. And sometimes it's a matter of not listening if they're not in a place where they need to talk.
Right.
So does that make sense?
It does.
Good.
What made you to take this direction in life? Like, what's your story?
My story.
Uh-huh.
So honestly, I would say when I was in middle school and high school, Jesus and the church where I grew up just made a huge difference in my life. And I really came to believe, that's the short version. I really just came to believe and have conviction that if I wanted to truly make a difference in people's lives, which is what I wanted to do, that I could have done other things, but I really came to believe that faith in Christ was the difference.
That's awesome.
And and that's one of the things I like about GraceMed is that, boy, really a lot of days we're really on the front line for meeting needs.
Right.
It really is. And I do think ultimately Jesus has to be the one that meets the needs, or we come up short.
Right.
So that's kind of
That's awesome.
that's the short version. Had some people in my background that cared the same way that we're trying to, and really that made all the difference in the world.
That's great. Where do you see your department in the next 5 years at GraceMed?
Boy, that's a great question too. I think one of the challenges we've had sometimes, Juven, has been our providers can be so overwhelmed with patient needs that they're just trying to keep up with the basics with our patients. So we're trying to continue to build better relationships with our providers so that they will refer the patients to us. We have some of that happening now, but I see that as a huge growth area to where the providers would just, like I said, it is easier for Houston because he can be at both those clinics so easily. But I think that's a huge growth area of continuing to do that and be available for our patients. And I'd really like to see us continue to do that more and more with staff. We have a lot of new staff, and continuing to build relationships with them. One of the things you and I have never talked about that has kind of come on the radar within the last few years as there's a shortage of chaplains. And we had a philanthropic foundation, approach us about funding an internship program here at GraceMed for chaplains. Part of the reason was they were trying to hire a chaplain for it's another state. They were trying to hire a chaplain for their healthcare clinics, and they couldn't find any. And so that's how we started in the conversation. The last few years with COVID and other changes has been a little harder to start something new. But there's an interest and a need for developing some other chaplains too. And I'd really love to. I do have a heart for that. I think there's. I was kind of shocked to find that even in clinics like ours, there were faith-based clinics. They were struggling to find anybody to do that. So that's also on the radar. I think just continuing to help with patients and with staff, and see if we can be a part of helping find chaplains.
That's awesome.
So,
well, Pastor Steve, I just want to say that I really appreciate all the work that you and your team does. I've known that I've seen like the positive effects by it, within my own department, and even with just coworkers.
Sure.
And so I truly appreciate all the work that you do, because I know it can be a little bit challenging.
Sure.
And especially when you're investing so much personally, because I think that when you are there for people, you're giving a little bit of yourself.
And like, know that as well. I appreciate that. And we have to take care of ourselves.
Right.
We have to take care of ourselves too, to have the order to have something to give. But thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So thank you for taking the time to meet with us and talk with us and letting our listeners know about spiritual care here at GraceMed and also a little bit about your story.
You bet. Happy to do it.
So
thank you
you.
very much.
Well, thank you guys for joining us, and I will see you next time in another episode.